Hi, and thank you for tuning in to the Daily Dose for Spiritual Growth. This week we are talking about our faith, and we're testing our faith by comparing it to some people from the Bible to consider if we are even if type faith people or if we are only if type faith people. Meaning, do we trust in God even if He doesn't do what we want? We don't understand what's happening. Do we still trust Him? Or do we trust God only if we get it? We're like, okay, God, yeah. And we feel like He's a part of our plan. So we'll be looking at biblical characters from the Bible and considering how they responded so that we can learn from it. I want to share one with you today from Job. You might be wondering, what will we talk about? No, of course you're not. When someone says the book of Job, if you're familiar with the Bible, you know that Job went through a lot. Specifically, in the first couple chapters, we see that God views him as upright, that he's honorable, that he's obedient, he's proud of his faith, and he lives for God. And Satan also recognized this, and he goes to God and he says, hey, what about your servant Job? I don't think he'll trust you if I make it hard for him. And God virtually says, go right ahead. There is no one more upright in the land. And so the story goes that Satan comes in and he just wreaks havoc in Job's life. We watch as his wealth is destroyed, as his belongings are destroyed, as his children are destroyed, as his buildings, his houses are destroyed. Everything is taken from him. And then as he's sitting there in despair and loss, his body gets boils and sores and pain and illness. And now he's just in a horrible state. And in that time, we see an encounter with his wife. And I wish the story was different, ladies, but it is. It is what it is. This is true. And so I have to read it as it is written. But his wife seemed to have an only if faith, and Job maintained an even if faith. Let's read. I'm just going to read a few verses from Job chapter 2, beginning in verse 6. It says, all right, do with him as you please, the Lord said to Satan, but spare his life. So Satan left the Lord's presence and he struck Job with terrible boils from head to foot. That's what I just talked about. After he lost everything else, now he's sick as well. Listen to verse 8. Job scraped his skin with a piece of broken pottery as he sat among the ashes. His wife said to him, are you still trying to maintain your integrity? Curse God and die. But Job replied, you talk like a foolish woman. Should we accept only good things from the hand of God and never anything bad? So in all this, Job said nothing wrong. In essence, it says Job did not sin, even in his pain and his anger and his frustration. He trusted God. This story is a perfect example in that little snippet of two people seeing the same situation very differently. You see, both of them were going through it, and yet his wife said, really? If God's going to do this, if God's going to allow this, if God is going to cause this, whatever her theology was in that moment, how could you trust him? Curse God, say whatever with you and die. And yet Job said no. He had such wisdom in his words. He says, are we to only accept the good things that God does? Are we to only trust God when he gives us what we want? Are we to only believe in God that he's good when we receive what we want? Of course not. We have to take the good with the bad. I want you to consider your life today and the situations in your life that have been bad. We all have them. I know the narrative may be a little bit different in yours versus mine, but we all have situations in life that if we were honest, we really didn't see God in them. Maybe at the time we just wondered, God, where are you? How could you allow this? How could a loving God allow me to lose that? How could a loving God allow me to go through this and whatever it is? And yet I challenge us by the words of Job today, who lost virtually everything. And yet he knew a simple truth, that God is good, even in the midst of horrible circumstances. Are there some things that you're going through right now that you're tempted to say, I just want to be done with God. If God's going to allow this, I want nothing to do with him. I've been there before. But would instead you consider what Job said? Hey, even if bad comes, we can't just take the good. We need to choose to trust God. Are there things in your life today that you need to literally hand over to God and say, God, even though I've been blaming you for this, even though I've been holding a grudge against you for this, I want to give it back to you because I trust you. Help me to trust you more. Hey, I want to thank you so much for tuning in today, and I hope to see you again tomorrow for another daily dose for spiritual growth.